All right, so far so good. All right, here we are. Oh, I need to pull up on the other computer. I need to pull it up because I don't have a view of the chat room on my computer. So, in case anyone wants to send us a message, not that many do. Most people don't watch us live; they listen to us on the podcast. But you never know.
Mm-hmm.
All right, there we are. All right, let's get going. All right, you ready?
I'm ready to go.
Let me mute my TV. I got the replay of Game 6. All right. Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 38 of the Hockey Nuts Podcast. My name is Wayne. I'm here once again with Steve. How's it going
Good
tonight?
evening, Wayne. How's it going tonight?
Oh,
Looking forward to a good podcast.
yeah, going great. Lots of good games going on. Well, not lots, just good games going on this past week as the conference finals are beginning to wind down. In fact, one of them's already finished.
That's right.
So
A shocking, surprising outcome.
Yeah, in fact, the title of this particular show is going to be Viva Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Because the Vegas Golden Knights have advanced to the Stanley Cup final. Who would have thought?
Absolutely stunningly incredible.
Yep. Great story. Great story. So we've got that to talk about. We've got the Eastern Conference finals to talk about, and that's headed to a Game 7. So we'll get you updated on both those series. We've got some coaching and GM news to talk about. And, of course, I want to throw out a reminder real quick, not going to dwell on it too much, that we are looking for additional co-hosts because Steve is stepping back to part-time here once we reach the summer months. So I've gotten a couple of responses already. I've yet to reply to them. So we've got a couple of people that have expressed interest. So I do need to get back to them. I just haven't had time to get to that with everything going on around the house and around the work and reffing and everything else that I've got going on. So, but promise, if you have replied to me or you've gotten to me about being a co-host, I will get back to you. I know Tony's one of them. He's been he's been a regular listener right from the beginning. So we're going to get back with him, and there's a couple of others that have responded too. So we'll get with them. So with that, let's go ahead and start. And of course, if you haven't responded yet on the invitation, we are looking to add more part-time hosts and or full-time hosts if you want to do this each and every week with me. So just get in touch with me through my Twitter, and that's at WayneHalley9, and we will we'll get back to you, and I can give you more details of that. But let's get into the hockey stuff for tonight. We've got the conference finals to talk about. We'll start in the East because that one's not over yet.
That's right.
And we are headed for Game 7 in this one. Tampa Bay versus Washington.
Yes.
Now, since we last picked up, they had finished 3 games. So Game 4, Washington had a 2-1 lead going into Game 4. Tampa Bay won that one 4-2. And then Tampa Bay also won Game 5 3-2. And that one was in Tampa. So the road team won the first 4 games in this series, and then the home team finally got one in Game 5, which gave Tampa the 3-2 lead going into Game 6. Now, this one was 2-0 Washington at one point. And now all of a sudden, we're back at 3-2 Tampa and thinking Washington's done. But in Game 6, Washington came out with a huge effort, and they ended up with the 3-0 shutout. Braden Holtby was lights out in this game, and Washington just played that desperation that they needed to play after Game 2.
Yep.
They just seemed to, I don't know, they played hard, but I didn't see the level of desperation out of Washington until we reached Game 6.
Yeah,
I don't know, that's my take on the initial take on it anyway.
they had a huge home. They while it wasn't any less for games 3 and 4, I just felt like their home crowd was really a benefit to them in Game 6. Of course, they won, but they just seemed to be. And I watched that game with my wife. They just seemed to be hitting on all cylinders, and the crowd took Tampa Bay right out of that game. And it didn't seem to happen in games 3 and 4. Tampa Bay scored timely goals, or there were things that happened that affected the Capital One Arena crowd, and it just didn't happen in Game 6. Game 6 was a powerful performance by Washington, and if they play anywhere close to that, I think they're going to win this series.
Absolutely.
I think they will win in Tampa Bay if they play anywhere close to what they did on Monday night.
Yep. And Tampa, on the other hand, was playing incredible. I mean, after they went down 2-0, they just appeared unbeatable for 3 straight games there. And then all of a sudden, I don't know if they just weren't they didn't show up to the game in Washington, weren't ready to play, whatever you want to call it. But
right.
You know, they just didn't match Washington's level of intensity in Game 6, and you know, here we are, Game 7.
Oh yeah.
So
and I think, Wayne, the first period is really going to be really important. Who scores that first goal may determine the outcome. I'm not saying that it will, but Washington cannot let this get away from them. They let Game 4 get away from them.
Yep. Now, our first prediction earlier in this series, in the last podcast, we both kind of agreed that the team that won Game 4 would go on to win the series.
That's right.
So the team that won Game 4 was Tampa. So I guess we'll see if our omen is correct on that one. Even though both of us have already talked and we've agreed that we're rooting for Washington to get through, because we want to see a new team win the Stanley Cup this year.
That's right.
And if Washington wins, we're guaranteed to see a new team win the Stanley Cup, because Washington's never won one, and of course Vegas has never won one either. So
that's right.
So we'll have a brand new Stanley Cup champion if Washington wins this game. So we're both kind of rooting for Washington to pull this one out tonight, but you never know.
There is a if you're a Rangers fan, I mean, I'd like to see Washington win, but if Tampa Bay wins, I don't feel that bad, because if Tampa Bay wins the Stanley Cup, we get their first round draft pick.
Oh, that's a biggie.
And so I'm not totally.
Of course, it's number 28, I think.
Yeah, it's way on down the line, but it's first rounder.
Right.
So
what do they get if they don't?
Then it goes to next year.
Next year, okay.
Yeah, they have to win the Stanley Cup either this year or next year, and we get their first round draft pick next year.
I see. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, so they got to actually win the cup. Okay.
Right.
That's right. I remember seeing that. Yep. Okay. Wow. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So you won't be disappointed either way.
I'm not disappointed either way, but I will say that my heart is pulling for Washington. I hope Washington wins.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm hoping Washington wins this series, but I kind of want to see the Vegas story happen.
Yeah.
Because I think that would be a good boost to the game itself, because it's going to get so much attention from the mainstream sports media and the mainstream regular media.
That's right.
That it'll be a good exposure for the game of hockey overall if Vegas wins. However short that exposure will be. Who knows how long, what the lasting impact of that would be. But any exposure is good, particularly here in the U.S. So, but with that in mind, let's go ahead and, unless you got anything else you want to add about this series, let's go ahead and move to the West.
No, that's it. That's all. Should be a great game tonight. And regardless, we're talking about the 3 best teams in the NHL this year: Vegas, Tampa Bay, and Washington.
Yeah. Agreed.
I think Winnipeg and Nashville were victims of the grind.
Yeah, I think Winnipeg had a lot of injuries that they weren't talking about. There just seemed to be guys, some guys got worn out. Of course, they're a young team. They got a lot of young
Yep.
players. Winnipeg's going to be good for a long time to come, and they'll be back next year. And we could end up seeing a Winnipeg Nashville Western Conference final again next year. I
Right.
honestly don't see this Vegas thing repeating next year because they've got a really large number of guys where their contracts are up this year. And because basically everybody on the Vegas Golden Knights had career years all at the same time, they're all going to be up for raises. And there's no way they're going to be able to fit this entire team as it's constructed under the cap next year. So not with all the pay raises that are going to have to go out.
Right.
So they're going to have to let some players go, unfortunately. But it's fun for this year, and we'll see. But yeah, let's talk about this series. We've just basically given away the details of who won this. Of course, Vegas won the series over Winnipeg. I was surprised at how short it went.
Yes,
since we last recorded, there's only been 2 games, and Vegas won them both. Vegas had a 2-1 lead coming or after we recorded last week, and Vegas won both games to take the series in 5.
Right.
And those were 3-2 and 2-1. So, yeah, Vegas ousted Winnipeg rather quickly in this one, and I was surprised by that.
Yeah, I was. I just think that Winnipeg showed signs of just being, the attrition of what happens in the NHL playoffs, and no experience in it for the team. They just got worn down, I think.
And the fact that it was a short series does not mean it wasn't close, because every game was a 1-goal game right to the end. I mean, look at the scores: 2-1, 3-2, 4-2. That was, I believe, there was an empty netter in that one. 3-1 again. I believe there was an empty netter in that one. And then game 1 was a 4-2 game. So all the games were relatively close, and it just came down to Vegas executing better than Winnipeg did.
Right.
And Fleury's been standing on his head the whole series.
Right.
And if he continues to play as well as he is, they're going to be tough to beat.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they will be. No question about it.
But it's a fun team to watch. I'm actually enjoying to watch. NBC's been showing the pump up stuff that they do inside the arena before the team comes out on the ice.
Yeah.
To start the game, they've been televising that. It's been fun. It's been real fun to watch all that stuff. So yeah. So here we are. Vegas is already through to the Stanley Cup final. And, I was watching the replay of the last game earlier today, and you know how Vegas, and this is kind of minor, it's just a little thing that I happened to notice, but you know how Vegas has up on the, of course, the letter, the captain, assistant captain has the letter, on the left shoulder.
Right.
On the right shoulder, they got the little mini patch on the Vegas jersey that says inaugural season on it. Well, once the teams go to the Stanley Cup final, they add the Stanley Cup final patch to both teams' jerseys.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to go right there where the inaugural season patch is. So what are they going to do? They're going to have to move that inaugural season patch over to the shoulder, and then I don't know how they're going to do it, or put them both on there.
You never know.
It's going to be a crowded, unless they just take the inaugural season off and put the Stanley Cup final on. I don't know how they're going to do that. But anyway, one of the little geeky things that I noticed.
They'll come up with a way, Wayne, to dazzle us, I'm sure.
Yep, for sure. So I can't wait. Either way, I mean, Vegas, Washington, Vegas, Tampa, it's going to be a very fun Stanley Cup final this year. It's not going to be. It's not going to be. I don't expect it to be too much of a defensive battle, because both teams play with a lot of speed and a lot of offense. Vegas probably plays a better defensive game than either one of the Eastern Conference teams, and the Eastern Conference, whoever it is going to be a better offensive team, obviously, because they've got the star power on those teams. But it should be fun.
Yes, absolutely. Yep, should be fun.
And I can't even begin to think who's going to win. I mean, I can't. Vegas is so unpredictable now. I might as well say Vegas is going to win the cup. I don't know.
I think they stand a good chance. However, either one of these teams that gets into the finals is going to it's going to be a series. I don't think it's going to be like Winnipeg. Vegas really hasn't had a tough series.
No, they really haven't. They're 12-3 right now.
Yeah, they really haven't had a tough haven't had a tough go of it at all.
No, they
swept the Kings.
They swept the Kings 1-6 in the second round.
Yep, against San Jose Sharks. Yep. But they really weren't ever really tested strongly in that Sharks series.
No. No.
And they won going away against Winnipeg.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen in the Cup Finals, but I think whoever they play, whoever wins tonight, is going to give them a series.
But I can tell you, there's a lot of salt coming out of Canada, especially from basically any NHL city that has a team that has never won the Cup. St. Louis, some of these teams that have been in the league a long, long time and haven't won a Cup in a long, long time. Toronto, of course, Winnipeg. A lot of salt coming from the fans, from what I can see online, because of the fact that here the Vegas fans are being treated to a Stanley Cup final in year one.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of envy, maybe even a little bit of jealousy amongst the fans around the league, particularly from teams that have either never won a Cup or haven't been there in a long, long time. So, just wanted to put that out there. I don't know for what it's worth. It's just, they're going to have their down times eventually.
Oh yeah.
But they just happen to catch lightning in a bottle this year, and they're going to they're having a deep run, and I hope the fans there enjoy it, and I hope they stick with the team when they do have their inevitable down period.
Oh yeah,
because it will happen. All right, that's all I had about these two. I mean, there's really not a whole lot to talk about here until we get into the Stanley Cup final.
That's correct. The finals start next Monday.
Yes, and we'll have the full schedule here as one of my stories coming up. So, all right, let's get into some of the stories that have gone on around the league this week, and of course we start with transactions, and there's been quite a few already this week, and we're going to start with Evander Kane. I haven't checked since I wrote this in my show notes, but it was reported that Evander Kane and the San Jose Sharks are closing in on a 7-year contract that could be finalized today. And that's according to the Associated Press. I haven't seen any confirmation that it is, in fact, finalized. But it looks like the Sharks are going to hold on to Evander Kane. If they don't, he will be an unrestricted free agent on July 1st. Kane was acquired by the Sharks in a trade with the Sabres for forward Danny O'Regan and a conditional first and fourth round picks in the 2019 draft on February 26th. Under the terms of that trade, the Sabres would receive San Jose's first round pick in the 2019 draft instead of a second round selection if Kane re-signs with San Jose. The selection is lottery protected and could be moved to 2020, although I doubt San Jose is going to end up in the lottery next year if they end up with Evander Kane, because they'll have Joe Thornton back. They'll have just about everybody else back on that team. So I expect they'll make the playoffs again next year. So looks like Evander Kane is coming back.
Yeah, it looks like he may have very well found a home in San Jose. 7 years is a long contract again, Wayne. We talk about that a lot.
Yes.
Particularly for him.
Yep.
But I think, if you look at it from the perspective of the young man that he is, I hope he's learned from things that have gone on, and that, he's going to make a commitment to the team for 7 years. That's what I hope. And I hope San Jose sees it that way, because he's he's had some troubled times. Let's put it that way. He didn't fit at all in Winnipeg, and the team didn't like him really. That was my take on it from seeing.
Yeah, that's possible.
They just didn't get along, and so he wanted out. But then he goes to Buffalo, and you can't say, you know what I'm saying? I think he was trouble there.
Yep.
So this is where he's really got to make a statement. He's been bounced around, and he cannot afford to have another downplay in his career.
Yeah, he has that history of some off-ice issues that are pretty well documented. It doesn't take long to search and find some of the stuff that he's taken a lot of heat for in the off the ice, really, more than anything. And he has bounced around quite a bit. And he's a good player. He was a first-round draft pick. I believe he was picked 4th overall, I think, the year he was drafted. So he's a good player. I mean, he's lightning fast.
Right.
Good skill. He just needs to apply himself, and it's, maybe it may be a case where the Sharks have seen that he's kind of turned that corner, and maybe, I guess the lack of a better term, grown up.
Right.
And become a professional. I mean, Tyler Seguin had his well-documented issues in Boston, that very short stint that he had in Boston before they traded him, and that kind of gave him a wake-up call, and he grew up pretty quickly after that. And you haven't heard any of that activity coming from Dallas. Now, whether or not he's still doing the stuff that he was reportedly doing in Boston, if he's doing it in Dallas, he may fly under the radar down there because it's not a traditional hockey market, where in Boston the spotlight's white hot there. So, so maybe that's part of it too. But Kane is another case that he's a talented player, but he's had his share of off-ice issues. So hopefully for the Sharks, giving him a 7-year contract will maybe he's turned the corner. He's going in the right direction. He'll stay headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
All right. The next transaction I have was announced either yesterday or today. David Quinn is named coach. Actually, he was officially named coach today.
That's correct.
Of the New York Rangers. And the article I have in my show notes is that he was expected to be named coach. So that just happened within the last couple of hours where it went public. And Steve will actually have more on this because he's going to talk about this signing as his pick of the week. So we'll skip it for now, and then we'll come back to it at the end of the show. So the next story I've got, it was a story written by Brian Compton, found on NHL.com. He writes, Lou Lamoriello was hired as president of hockey operations for the New York Islanders on Tuesday. The list of items he'll need to address to bring them back to prominence is long and challenging. Here are 5 things Lamoriello must try to accomplish before the Islanders open training camp in September. Number 1, pretty straightforward, re-sign Tavares. Number 2,
that is really slipping away.
Yeah.
It really is.
Number 2, find a number 1 goaltender. Number 3, acquire a top defenseman. Number 4, address the coaching staff. And number 5, upgrade the bottom 6 forwards. So, let's talk about this signing here. Lou Lamoriello comes in and gets hired as president of hockey operations. Now, all the Islanders fans that I've seen online think that item number 1, outside of, even though number 1 is re-sign Tavares, all the fans want item number 1 to be get rid of Garth Snow. And then number 2, re-sign Tavares.
Right.
I don't know if that's going to happen or not. Obviously he's just got hired, so I'm sure he's going to go in there and assess the situation, interview Snow, have meetings with him, and a lot of the fact that Tavares hasn't been re-signed, the blame is being put on Garth Snow. Fair or not, Snow is the GM, so I guess that's the fan perspective. But I can tell you, with the Islanders getting Lou Lamoriello to come in and become the president of hockey operations. So he essentially is Garth Snow's boss at this point.
Yep.
I think that gives the Islanders a much, much better chance at signing John Tavares than they had before they got Lou Lamoriello. That's just my personal feeling.
Wow. I can't stand him. I can't stand Lou. I can't stand him. I hated him when he was in New Jersey, and I really I think the Islanders. Is he a good GM? Yeah, I mean he's they won 3 Stanley Cups. He built the Devils into what they were. I'm not. They had Marty Brodeur all those years.
Yep.
He'll never get that again. There's a guy that comes along once in a lifetime, but. As to whether or not they sign Tavares, I don't know. It all depends on, hey, does John Tavares want to stay an Islander and play in a mixed-up situation until this Coliseum thing is cleared up? If he does, by golly, we'll start seeing articles on it.
Yep.
We'll start seeing something. There'll be something come across the waves now that Lamoriello's in. We'll start seeing something saying, well, they're nearing the impasse that's existed is leaving, and they're nearing a settlement in New York. You're gonna start to see that. If in a week or two we don't have, if we reach my last podcast and there's no hint of that in the news, I just think that Tavares is out. He's gone. And I don't think it matters whether Lou Lamoriello's in there or not.
Yeah, and I think this Lou Lamoriello thing is a temporary thing for the Islanders. I think Lou Lamoriello's been hired to do basically the same thing he did in Toronto. Go in there, bail out the organization, get the ship turned in the right direction, and then once it is, he's going to step aside and let someone else take over.
Right.
But like him or not, Lou Lamoriello has a ton of respect around the league.
Oh yes, no doubt about it.
So that alone will possibly get Tavares into thinking to stay there. Now, yeah, they have the arena issue, although that somewhat should have been solved. They did announce that they're going to be building a new arena. Whether or not Tavares wants to stick around long enough to get that arena built and open is another, question.
Right.
But the Islanders have ever since really the years that they won the Stanley Cup, the Islanders have been a mess pretty much since then.
Right.
And this even goes before Garth Snow. They were a mess. So there's a lot to do there.
Yeah.
And, of course, getting Tavares signed, you got to have a good team has got to have at least one franchise player. So, and they have one right now, at least until July 1st. And they need to find a way to get him signed so he doesn't walk and end up going somewhere else. And they do need to address their goaltending. That has been a problem. But then the Islanders seem to be pretty much in the same spot as the Carolina Hurricanes, if you look at it. You look at it closer. Hurricanes are missing a number 1 center. Islanders have one, but are about to lose him if they don't get him signed. Goaltending's an issue in Carolina. It's an issue in the Island.
Yep.
Acquiring a top defenseman, well, Carolina seems to have several in their system that are available. So I think Carolina's a step ahead in that situation. And they think they've solved their coaching staff issue, which the Islanders, I guess, need to address. And then the bottom end of their lineup, well, Carolina's not that good either. So, otherwise they'd be in the playoffs. So, these are two teams basically heading down the same road together.
Path.
Yeah,
you could say that. That's very good, Wayne.
And the only thing
I just think that there's like a 2 or 3 week window for Lou Lamoriello and John Tavares. That's what you have.
Probably.
If Tavares really does, it's up to him whether he wants to stay.
Yep.
I mean, Lou Lamoriello really has little effect on that. I think a coach might have more effect on that than Lou Lamoriello. But if Lou Lamoriello is, he's a deal maker. Sure he is. He's a deal maker, as he has been in the past. Maybe he can put some sort of a deal together to keep Tavares in New York on the island. But I think he's valuable.
Yep.
And if he wants to stay in New York, I know personally I don't see the Rangers passing on him. There may be discussions going on quite heavily. If he's looking to get the best, the most dollars and move on to another place, then the Rangers won't. You won't hear too much.
Yep, and I certainly would agree with that. That your sentiment earlier that we basically have a 2-week window.
Yep.
I think if nothing has happened within the first 2 weeks, that's a big sign that Tavares has decided to test free agency.
Right, and here's another point, Wayne. The Islanders may know the answer to that question right there.
They may already know.
They already know that Tavares has passed on them. And so they need a guy like Lou Lamoriello to come in and do exactly what you just said. These points all being considered, they may say, well, hey, look, God, John Tavares is gone. Somebody's already made a deal for him. And we don't know that, but Tavares may have already said, listen, I'm out of here. I'm not, don't waste your time. Okay? And now in comes Lou Lamoriello. One of the best, really, one of the best. Comes in and he's got a tough job. But by golly, if you're going to put somebody in there to clean house and straighten things up, there's the guy to do it.
Yeah.
That may be what's happened.
Agreed. Yeah. Yep. So I guess we'll find out in a couple of weeks here to see
Agreed.
what's going to happen. So, and I'm sure stuff will start coming out as soon as the Stanley Cup final is over. During the Stanley Cup final, any drama or controversy or any of the stuff like that going on with other teams tends to get pushed down and swept under the rug because the league doesn't want any attention being pulled away from their premier event. So, so I don't expect to see much of anything come out of this until the Stanley Cup final is over. Which
I agree with you.
But
I wouldn't be surprised to see one flashing story.
Yeah,
in the middle of the Stanley, all of a sudden here comes an article.
I guarantee you, the New York media is digging. They're digging.
Yeah.
And if there's anything there to find, they'll find it. So.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's move on to the next story. I saw a player signing earlier today. Antti Niemi signed a 1-year, $950,000 contract with the Montreal Canadiens on Tuesday. The 34-year-old goalie, who could have become an unrestricted free agent on July 1st, was 7-9-4 with a 3.12 goals against average, .911 save percentage in 24 games with 3 different teams this season. He went 7-5-4 with a 2.46 goals against average and .929 save percentage and 1 shutout in 19 games with Montreal, filling in for injured starter Carey Price. Mm-hmm. And, of course, they got Niemi originally by claiming him off waivers from the Florida Panthers on November 14th. And he pretty much got shelled with his other 2 teams that year or earlier last year. So Montreal's decided to keep Niemi around for at least another season as the backup goalie. Of course, when you're paying Carey Price $10+ million a year, obviously you're going to have your $10 million guy taking the bulk of the games. So Montreal, at least until Carey Price decides he's done playing, is only going to be in the market for a backup goalie going forward.
Right.
And
still, it's good to get that short up.
Yeah, it's good to get that short up. I'm kind
Antti Niemi has won a Stanley Cup.
But I question his ability to in the long term to fill in if Carey Price goes down. If Carey Price gets hurt, Montreal's done. Because Niemi is, in my mind, Niemi is a borderline NHL goaltender at best at this point in his career. Yeah, he filled in okay with Montreal when Price went down, but he was playing very poorly before he came to Montreal.
Yeah.
So,
I agree. I agree with you.
Montreal obviously has faith that he can fill in. I wouldn't expect him to play more than 15 games, assuming Price is healthy all year. Anyway, and he won't play at all in the playoffs, if they make it that far. So obviously they want somebody cheap. They got their guy, less than $1 million. Works perfect for him. It's an easy job for him. He sits on the bench for 85% of the games, and the little bit he does play, he'll make $1 million basically for playing 15 games. I'd sign up for that any day.
Yeah.
All right. Paul Fenton was hired as general manager of the Minnesota Wild on Monday. Fenton replaces Chuck Fletcher, who was fired on April 23rd. Fenton received a multi-year contract to oversee the Wild hockey operations department. Fenton, who's 58, spent the last 20 seasons with the Nashville Predators, including the previous 12 as assistant GM, helping them qualify for the Stanley Cup playoffs in 11 of the past 14 seasons and reach the Cup final in 2017. He was part of the management group that drafted defenseman Roman Josi, Ryan Suter, and Shea Weber, and goalie Pekka Rinne. So I guess we can debate on how much Paul Fenton was, a major part of the Nashville machine, or was he not? But I know the Wild are very excited to have him as their general manager.
Yes,
because I saw a bit of the press conference, and they're well, of course they should be, but because it's still the honeymoon period, but yeah, they're pretty ecstatic to get him. If he can do with the Wild what he helped do with the Predators, the Wild will be a pretty good team, and they are a pretty good team. They just need to get to the next level. They just can't seem to win in the playoffs. Has been their major problem.
Yep. I think they're a good team. I think they're a playoff team. I think they could surprise people and step up the ladder some. And maybe he's the guy to do it.
So, but we'll see. We'll see what he does. He'll probably want to come in and make a splash in the offseason and sign a big name free agent or two. Even though there aren't really, outside of Tavares, there really aren't a lot of really stud players out there that are going to be up for free agency.
Right.
I think that the days of that are they seem to be dwindling year after year. There seems to be fewer and fewer players hitting the free agent market as teams are doing more to try to lock up their guys long term.
Right.
In this salary cap world, but I guess we'll see what they can do. And,
agreed.
Minnesota is a great state for the game of hockey. Their fans are very passionate. They deserve a good team because they've never really had one.
I agree with you.
Outside of the very few Stanley Cup runs that the old North Stars did.
Dino Ciccarelli.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the final transaction that I've gotten. This is actually not a player or management transaction. It's an arena transaction. The St. Louis Blues home arena is going to be renamed. It's going to be called the Enterprise Center. Enterprise as in the rental car company. As part of a 15-year naming rights agreement announced on Monday. The name change takes effect on July 1st. The building, which opened in 1994, has been called the Scott Trade Center since 2006. And it previously was the Kiel Center from 94 to 2000 and the Savvis Center from 2000 to 2006. So St. Louis will be playing at the Enterprise Center starting next season.
Yes. Really not a big... I've never rented a car from Enterprise, so it has no effect on me.
Yep.
I just know that that's a tough place for the Rangers to play. When we go play in St. Louis, a lot of times we have a tough job winning the games. So, maybe the name Enterprise Center will help us. I don't know. I don't like playing in St. Louis against the Blues. They're a good team there.
Yeah, well, they're a good team. That's another city that is starved for a Stanley Cup championship. And I don't know what a name change is going to help them for that, but but hey, any money being infused into the organization is probably a good thing. I don't know how much of that the Blues will actually get. They are the main tenant in that building. There's no NBA team there, so they don't have to fight over use of the building with another team.
Right, and that's a town. That's a town as well that had the Cardinals leave.
Yep.
The Rams left.
Yep.
So they don't compete with the NFL.
No competition from the NFL. Only baseball, and of course it is a baseball town. The St. Louis Cardinals
big-time baseball town. Oh yeah.
The St. Louis Cardinals are huge, but the seasons are almost perfectly opposite each other.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it works. The Blues get all the attention in the winter, and the Cardinals get all the attention in the summer.
That's right.
So, all right, let's move on. They didn't have any injuries this week, obviously there are players that are injured amongst these four teams. They're just not talking.
Right.
Nobody's talking about anything right now. And so no injuries, no suspensions. So that puts us into some of the other interesting stories we've got going on around the league. And the first one I've got is the Vegas Golden Knights will play either the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Washington Capitals in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final on Monday, May 28th. So they announced, was it earlier today or yesterday?
Yesterday, yes.
Yesterday, okay. That they announced the Stanley Cup Final. And the biggest thing that I noticed is how they are dragging out the last three games. I don't know if you noticed that.
I did notice that, and I was shocked by it.
Because Game 1 is May 28th. That's a Monday.
Yeah.
Game 2 is Wednesday, May 30th. Game 3 is Saturday, June 2nd, so just 2 days apart on those. Game 4 is Monday, June 4th. So just a single-day break between each game for the first four games. Then, Game 5 doesn't happen until June 7th. That's a 2-day break. Game 6 doesn't happen until June 10th, another 2-day break.
Yep.
Game 7 is Wednesday, June 13th, another 2-day break.
That's right.
So 5, 6, and 7, it's 9 days to play 3 games.
Yep.
After Game 4. That's dragging it out. And they're kind of on weird days because NHL's not necessarily known for Sunday games, but Game 6 will be on a Sunday. Game 7 will be on a Wednesday night, which is also typically a very slow night around the NHL.
I have a theory on this, Wayne, when I saw that.
And no Saturday games after Game 3. Game 3 is a Saturday. And Saturday typically is the favorite day for NHL. What's your theory?
My theory, if you had looked at the last 2 seasons, the Stanley Cup has been decided, and the team who has won it after June the 10th. The 12th, I think, was one of the days, and perhaps the 13th or the 14th. It's been decided after June 10th, the last 2 seasons, Pittsburgh winning it. This year, we get to the Stanley Cup Finals, and if they continued to play it out, Monday, Wednesday, and then Friday, June the 1st, and we go to a Sunday, June the 4th, well, you're looking at the first 4 games being completed by June the 3rd or June the 4th, and there's no way in hell it's going to get past June the 10th.
Yeah.
And I think the reason for that is because there was no Olympics this year. They didn't send players away. They didn't, the NHL didn't have an extra couple of weeks where players were gone or whatever. So the season is ending quicker, and they want to extend it back out, I think, to get in line with how it's gone the last couple of years. But you're right. It seems like especially these last 3 games, to give teams 3-day breaks in between each game is, I don't know. I can understand doing it once, but or even twice during the series. But here they're doing it 4 times.
Yep. And I also have another theory, and I agree with that point. Those points that they want to keep. They want to keep the Stanley Cup winnings ceremony and the parade and all that stuff roughly the same week each year.
Yep.
Instead of moving it around. But the other theory I've got too, I just looked it up. The NHL Awards is the next event on the calendar after the Stanley Cup is awarded. And that isn't until June 20th. So if they were to go every other day and have it end, well, basically on the 7th or 8th, if they
Yep.
did every other day all through the Game 7, you'd have almost 2 weeks between the end of the Stanley Cup final and the NHL Awards.
Right.
And hockey will basically fall off the radar with that amount of time between the Stanley Cup final ending and the awards ceremony. So I think they're stretching it out to at least get it to within a week of the award ceremony. So if it goes 7, you're looking at June 13th, and then June 20th is 8 days, 6 to 7 days later. A week later, you have the award ceremony, and then right after that, you have the draft.
Yes.
So they want these things to go, boom, boom, boom. So keep hockey on the radar at least until you get to free agency on July 1st.
Right.
And to have too much of a gap there, I think the marketing people would say is not a good thing. So hence the reason they're stretching it out. And they want to make, more of an event of it too. So I get it. It will certainly help if either team is banged up. It will certainly help any team that's banged up try to help them get healthy between games there by having all these extra days off. So you got an extra day between games 2 and 3. Of course, that's travel day, where either way you're basically traveling across the country because Vegas is out west and the other 2 teams are here in the east. So you got that one of those 2 days is a travel day, and then you've got their normal day off. So I get that one.
Right.
Well, they're actually all travel days if you look at it. Between 4 and 5 is a travel day. Between 5 and 6 is a travel day, and 6 and 7 is a travel day.
Right.
So they're given that extra time for travel between the Eastern and Western Conference. So, all right. I guess it's not that much of a big deal, but they're certainly stretching it out. That's for sure. All right. So that is all I have for the interesting stories. Let's head into honors and milestones. And I only have one, and actually it's not a really honor milestone or anything like that. It's a retirement. I don't know if you saw this.
Yeah, I have not seen this. This is a surprise to me.
Oh, okay. Well, it's I didn't catch the author of the article, but I found it on NHL.com. It says, when Marian Hossa missed last season with a progressive skin disorder, it left a huge void in the Chicago Blackhawks lineup. They lost a forward who was good at preventing goals as he was at scoring them, who was a big part of every facet of their game from 5-on-5 to the power play to the penalty kill. Now that void is permanent. Hossa told the Slovakian newspaper Novi Čas he's done with playing hockey. The 39-year-old has 3 years remaining on the 12-year contract he signed with the Blackhawks on July 1st in 2009, but played his last game for Chicago on April 20th, 2017 against the Predators in Game 4 of the Western Conference first round. Since then, I haven't put the gear on, not even a single one time, Hossa told the newspaper. I've been on the ice a couple times just to skate with my daughters, but I haven't had my hockey gear on. Hossa's statement was disappointing but not surprising. He was on long-term injury reserve last season, and the chances of him returning to play never looked good. At the Blackhawks' final media session of the season on April 10th, GM Stan Bowman said Hossa's physical condition hasn't improved, So at this point, there's no indication he's going to play next year either. Hossa has 1,134 points in 1,309 games in 19 NHL seasons for the Senators, Thrashers, Penguins, Red Wings, and Blackhawks. He had 149 points in 205 playoff games and won the Stanley Cup 3 times with the Blackhawks. So here's a question for you. Obviously, Hossa's done at this point. Is he a Hall of Famer?
Possibly. That one is going to be a tough one. I don't know. He has won 3 Stanley Cups, but you can make a very good argument, Wayne, that there are other players in that Chicago Blackhawks lineup that are definitely going to make the Stanley Cup. Make the Hall of Fame.
Oh, there's a number of them.
Duncan Keith is a shoo-in Hall of Famer. He's going to make the Hall of Fame. Yep. There's no doubt about it.
Keith, Kane, Taves.
Patrick Kane is going to make the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
But I don't know about Marian Hossa. He could. I don't think he's the first ballot.
I think he does, based on the length of his career and the fact that he was almost, not quite, but almost a point-a-game player. And this day and age, that's pretty rare to have anyone even approach a point-a-game. No, I don't agree that he would be a first ballot. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that he's got 3 Stanley Cups, played 19 seasons, and was productive throughout most.
Yep.
I think he eventually gets in. May take him a few years, but he may get it. I think he eventually gets in. So it's tough for the Blackhawks and their fans that they're losing their guy that they were hoping it would come back, but he's 39. He knew it was coming anyway. I've been expecting Chara's retirement for about 5 years now. So yet he keeps going, and he's already announced that he's going to be back next year. So we'll have at least one more year of Chara. So all right. That leads us to the power rankings. We're rolling right along this week.
We are rolling through this, Wayne. There's going to be some discussion on things. I don't know. This might be the last power rankings next week. I don't know. Maybe with 3 teams you could pick it, but this is a relatively easy one. And if we do another power rankings, this is my last.
Yep.
So here it is. It's real simple. I put down Nashville again as an honorable mention, even though they are eliminated from the playoffs. I've got them as number 5. Number 4, of course, is the Winnipeg Jets, the only team who have been eliminated from these conference finals. I had them as number 1 last week, and they really fell apart. They fell apart. I thought they were a tired team. I really did, in that last game especially. And also, Winnipeg doesn't have the lights-out goaltender. If they do acquire a lights-out, and I'm talking top 5 in the league goaltender, I think you see them really make an even bigger thrust. I don't think Connor Hellebuck is in that category yet.
But he could be. I think he could be. He may be their guy. I guess he's got to repeat it for another season.
Yeah.
Because this is really the first year that he's been that lights-out guy for them. Just like, every goaltender that has come up through, they got to prove it that it's more than a one-year thing.
Right.
But if he puts up the numbers next year like he did this year, and again the next year after that, then, they've got their guy.
I agree.
And they're going to give him every opportunity to do that. So I don't think they're making any changes at goaltender in the offseason.
Well,
I think they've already decided Hellebuck's their guy until he proves otherwise. But
right.
But yeah, you're cautiously optimistic with the goaltending situation there in Winnipeg.
Right.
But before this season, it was a big question mark. It really was.
Yeah. Next, I've got the Washington Capitals, and the only reason I have them at number 3 is because they lost both home games in this series against Tampa Bay. That's the only reason I put them down as number 3. They had a golden opportunity to put Tampa Bay on their butts out of this and blew it.
I have them number 3 on mine as well, and the reason I did is the fact that they're going into Tampa Bay for Game 7. That alone, even though the road team has won the majority of the games in this, when it comes down to a single game elimination, Game 7, where both teams have their entire season on the line, I don't care who you are, you want to be playing at home.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it.
And that gives Tampa Bay the edge in that Game 7.
I agree. And Washington dug themselves a hole. That's why I put them at 3. Yep. Number 2, the Tampa Bay Lightning. There's no way you can put them above to number 1.
Nope.
The Vegas Golden Knights are the best performing team in the playoffs, and therefore they are number 1 in the power rankings this week.
Yep.
So that's all she wrote for me on that.
I would agree. And Vegas, yeah, certainly deserves that number 1 spot this week. They're the only team that has locked up their spot in the Stanley Cup Final. So, all right, that moves us on to the Minor League Minute. And, of course, I'm going to continue my trend this week on talking about the AHL playoffs and the international tournament, the World Championships that's going on. Or that's actually just finished a couple days ago, finished on Sunday. So I'm going to talk about that. And what were you planning on talking about? I don't recall.
I actually picked, and it's not a minor league minute, so to speak, but then again, we're not talking about the NHL. I picked Patrick Kane, who won the MVP of the World Championships.
Okay.
And that's what my minor league hockey minute is about.
So before you get into that, then let's go ahead and recap what's happened in the World Championships. And of course, going into the, let's see, what we had gotten to the semifinal, right, when we last podcasted.
That's right.
Yep. Okay. So we had Team USA playing. Wait, hang on. I gotta have it up here. All right. There it is. All right. Team USA played Sweden in the one semifinal. Canada was playing Switzerland in the other semifinal. And, of course, we were hoping that Team USA would break their long, long World Championship drought that goes way back to 1960. In fact, I think we looked it up after the podcast last week, and USA hasn't even won any medals really since way back then in the World Championships.
A silver or a gold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. They've got a couple of bronzes, but no silvers, no golds since 1960. And unfortunately, that streak is going to continue because Sweden dominated the semifinal game against the USA and won that game 6-0. Wasn't even much of a game.
Yep.
And I didn't get a chance to see that game, so I don't know exactly what went on. But when it's 6-0, it's just a total beatdown as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Of Sweden versus USA.
Yep.
In the other semifinal, Canada played Switzerland. Switzerland, the surprise entry into the semifinal. They're not known for their hockey. Now they have a few players. They have a few. They're kind of. Everybody talks about the big six in international hockey. USA, Canada, Sweden, Switzerland, not Sweden, Finland, Russia, Czech Republic. That's considered your big six. And then Slovakia generally is considered the seventh team. But Switzerland's never considered part of that group. They're just outside that group, but somehow they played their way into the World Championship semifinal this year, and got the opportunity to play Canada for the gold medal game entrant. And surprisingly, they beat Canada.
They did
3-2. In the semifinal game on May 19th. So that set up a gold medal game of Sweden versus Switzerland. and a bronze medal game of USA versus Canada. And in the bronze medal game, USA beat Canada 4-1 to take the bronze. So Canada goes home with nothing.
With nothing.
Yep. And that must have I know USA and Canada don't particularly care so much about the World Championship because the vast majority of NHL players are Canadians and Americans, and all the best players generally, or the ones that are still playing in the Stanley Cup Championship or Stanley Cup playoffs, are not involved in this tournament at all.
Mm-hmm.
So you can make a case that USA and Canada don't have the opportunity to put their best team out there for the World Championship. But then again, the 4 NHL teams that are remaining do have a number of players from around the world, and every country is missing at least one key guy that they would have if the Stanley Cup playoffs weren't going on. So, but USA and Canada tends to be missing more because of the fact that over half the players in the NHL are either American or Canadian. Probably 3/4 of the players.
Right. So,
but with that said, USA still beat Canada 4-1. Go USA.
Yeah.
And they win the bronze. And then the gold medal game actually was an amazing game. It went to a shootout. And Sweden wins in a shootout.
Yes.
Against Team Switzerland. So
their second world championship in a row.
Second world championship in a row, yep. Just pulling up stats here in that game. All right, Sweden's goals were by your guy, Mika Zibanejad, and Gustav Nyquist, former UMaine Black Bear. And Philip Forsberg ended up getting the shootout winner in that one.
Mm-hmm.
And Oliver Ekman-Larsson also scored a goal in the shootout. Sven Andrighetto got a shootout goal for Team Switzerland. Timo Meyer and Nino Niederreiter were the goal scorers for Switzerland in regulation. So, all around a great game. Full house, I presume. 12,490, I guess, would be a full house in Denmark. Yeah, good game overall. And what a moment for Switzerland to take Sweden to the shoot. They were a shootout goal away from winning a world championship.
Yeah. That's really amazing.
So with that, you have a story about the MVP award.
I have a story in regards to this, Wayne, and maybe we can figure there is a puzzled part of this story that I didn't have an answer for right off the bat, but we can talk it out and see if there's something. But Wayne, we've talked about this before, the lack of enthusiasm, whatever it is, the United States really doesn't put a lot of effort and a lot of chutzpah into winning the world championship. If they did, I think from between 1960 and now, they would have won it.
At least once, because this is not an every 4
years.
This is not this isn't an every 4-year tournament. This tournament happens every year.
Every year. And you can think of the American teams that have come up through the ranks. At some point, I feel they could have won the world championships, and they haven't. So I can only attribute it to, the United States doesn't put a lot of emphasis and a lot of desire and passion into winning this game or winning this tournament, or they would have. But this year they did. They put together a great team of young players. There were Rangers on this team.
Yep.
There were Blackhawks on this team. Teams that had been eliminated from the playoffs sent their top players and core into this tournament. And my article that I picked is in regards to the captain of Team USA, Patrick Kane. There's some very little known things that I didn't know about, but are very, very, I thought, really great additions to Team USA, and hopefully they can build on this for the future. The article's entitled, Patrick Kane Enjoys a Tournament to Remember at the World Championship. If he had his way, the United States would have been playing for the gold medal instead of the bronze. In a perfect world, Patrick Kane wouldn't have even been in Denmark for the World Championships. That would mean that he was still playing with the Blackhawks,
Right.
who at this point would be in the conference finals or already have clinched a spot in the Stanley Cup final. Instead, the winger, who was named the captain of Team USA, put on the best show of any individual at the tournament over the past 2.5 weeks. Over the course of 10 games, Kane scored 8 goals and dished out 12 more assists, with his total of 20 points being the highest of the tournament. And that really is amazing. It's arguably the best the Blackhawks forward and 2016 NHL MVP has played in international competition for Team USA. While his 10 games in the tournament were the most in a given year, Kane's previous high in points was 12 during the 2006 Men's Under-18 World Championships in 7 games. He also had 10 points in 7 games at the 2008 World Championships. At the Winter Olympic Games, Kane had 9 total points as part of Team USA in both 2010 in Vancouver and in 2014, which was held in Sochi. This surge by Kane during the World Championships comes in a second renaissance of his career in the NHL. Over the past 3 seasons, Kane has scored at least 76 points, including his 106-point MVP season of 2015-16. This past season with the Blackhawks, Kane had 27 goals and 49 assists. Maybe a little bit of letdown, but still a very important player on that team. That season didn't turn out as he hoped, but at least his time in May was a success in Europe. The U.S. topped Canada 4-1 to claim its 3rd bronze medal in 6 years, but no standalone world title since 1933. That's the puzzlement part. I don't know what happened in 1960, but it said no standalone world title since 1933. With Kane becoming the first American, and this is shocking, the first American to take MVP honors in tournament history. And he got those honors from the bronze medal winning United States team, not the champion or the silver medal winning Swiss team. The bronze medal team had the MVP for the tournament, which that you don't see that too often. It's important for the team, but it's also important for USA Hockey, Kane said. Now we can build up off this level and try to keep being better and better. Obviously, I'm here to produce and try to create offense and more plays out there, Kane said. Overall, I'm happy. It was a fun tournament and a great experience for me, and I hope it will help me with my career going forward, too. So hats off to Patrick Kane for making a real statement over there in Denmark for Team USA in a tournament that all we do is show up, and that's pretty much it.
Yep, and yeah, we pretty much show up. It's just pretty much the because what generally happens particularly with the European countries is the moment that a player NHL team gets eliminated. Let's use Philip Forsberg for example. He plays for the Nashville Predators.
Yep.
The moment the Predators got eliminated, he basically threw his bag in the car, went to the airport and headed straight for Sweden or for Denmark, where the World Championships were taking place, and immediately started playing for Team Sweden.
Yeah.
You don't see that much urgency with the Americans and the Canadians in particular on getting the top players that are possibly available. Generally, players that get eliminated in the first and second round will join the team. But the third round elimination guys generally just go home. They don't bother to go. But obviously some of the players, Nashville got eliminated in the they got eliminated in the second round. But some So it's not a perfect example, but there are guys that essentially once they get eliminated are jumping on a plane, and the European guys in particular are heading straight for that tournament so they can go help their country.
Yep.
So so this tournament is well known for being way more important to the European players than it is for the North American players, and the results show. USA hasn't won what they said a standalone title since 1933. It must have been co-golds in 1960 is probably what it was.
That must be what it is, because that is written and put down. What I'm really surprised about, I go back, Wayne, this is going way back, but I remember way back when the Maryland Terrapins were and they still are some years, a ACC basketball powerhouse. And way back in the day, they had a guy named Albert King. You remember Albert King? Albert King was a tremendous, exceptionally gifted college basketball player. And they hand out the Everett Case Award for the most valuable player in the ACC tournament every year. Well, Albert King did not play on the championship team. He played on the second place team. And I remember when he walked out and accepted the award, and the announcers talked about how rare that is to see a guy do that. But for Patrick Kane, that's the third place finishing team. I don't know that that's ever happened before, but I'm real glad that Team USA's player was finally selected as the MVP for the tournament. That just never happens.
Yep. Yeah, well, just the fact that the MVP is coming from a team that didn't win is kind of unusual.
Right.
That just shows how dominant he was.
He had a tremendous World Championships.
All right, I've solved the mystery. In 1960, USA won the gold in the Winter Olympics that year. They did not have a World Championship tournament that year. The Olympics that year served as the World Championship for that season. So that was the case from 68 going back to all the way back to the beginning. When there was an Olympic tournament, they did not have a World Championship in those seasons. So 68, 64, 60, 56, 52, 48, 36, 32, going on back, 28, 24. When the Olympic gold medal winning team was considered the world champion for that season.
Mm-hmm.
That's why U.S. technically does not have a standalone world championship
since 1933.
Since 1933.
That is unbelievable.
Because 33 obviously was not an Olympic year, and USA won the gold that year. So for this tournament, USA has got a stunning drought. I guess is the best way to do it. So, but in all fairness, when was the last time the World Championship was held in North America? 2008, Halifax and Quebec City.
Yeah.
Before that, looking at it, North America, nowhere. Wow. 1962.
God.
And then, of course, 1960 was the Olympic year, and that was in Squaw Valley, USA. Colorado Springs and Denver. So the last time U.S. hosted a World Championship was 1962. I don't even believe the Americans are even trying to host this tournament at all.
Yeah, I agree with you.
You would think one of the top 6 powerhouses in hockey overall would get to host it more than that.
Yep.
But the Americans aren't even trying to host it. I would hope that would change at some point in the future. I would think you could get, because by the time the World Championships start, the Stanley Cup playoffs are still finishing their first round when the World Championship starts. But by the time you get to the medal rounds, you're down to 4 teams in the NHL.
Yep.
There should be enough interest to have that tournament here in the U.S. And I think that would change. That would change the interest level among the fans here in the U.S. if the U.S. hosted one of these once in a while, and it ultimately would change the outcome.
Think of what we'd be talking about, Wayne, had the United States beat Sweden.
Yeah.
It would be history.
Yep.
So they came one game from doing it. Most of the time what happens, from what I see in this, is the United States, they don't even make their wet medal round. They are eliminated before, long before it gets over.
Right, usually. And usually when they get to the semifinal, at least since 1960 anyway, the best they do is lose the semifinal game and play for the bronze. They've got 5 bronze medals since 1996.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I guess we'll just plead to USA Hockey, the organization, to try to get a world championship held here in the U.S. And, and it'd be nice if they would have it, somewhere within driving distance so we could go attend a game or two. I'd love to go see games in this tournament. Yeah. But the whole thing is always it's always taking place in Europe. So, oh well. I guess it is what it is, right?
It is what it is. That's right.
All right. So let's move on. We got to talk about the American Hockey League Calder Cup playoffs. And I just went to the, here we go, playoff brackets. Just pulling it up here. All right. We are now in the conference final for the Calder Cup playoffs. And last week when we last left off, they had just finished round 2, so the 4 teams had advanced, but they hadn't played any games yet in the conference final. So we're now a couple games into it. Toronto Marlies are playing the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, and they have completed 2 games, and Toronto is up in that series 2-0. And they've pretty much, from the stories that I saw, are really playing very well.
Yeah.
And are looking like the team to beat in the American League. And out west, you've got the Texas Stars. They are up 3-0 against the Rockford Ice Hogs. So unless things change, it appears we're looking at a Texas Stars versus Toronto Marlies.
Now that's a plane ride. That's a plane flight.
That's a north-south plane flight for sure.
Yeah.
So Canada has a chance at winning a Calder Cup. Small consolation for the fact that they don't have a chance at winning a Stanley Cup again this year.
That's right.
So that's your American League update, unless you have anything you want to add to that.
Nothing to add to that, although I've heard about what a good team the Toronto Marlies are. I wouldn't be surprised that's the team.
Yeah, that's what it's looking like. But again, East doesn't play West until the finals, so you don't know until they start playing against that Western Conference team. But Toronto is looking very, very strong. So, yeah, they should play their games at the Air Canada Centre. Nobody else is using it right now.
They may, too.
Little dig at the Leafs right there. All right. So we're down to our picks of the week, and you are going to talk about a change in coaching with the Rangers. And I'm going to talk about Kraft Hockeyville. So
let me go ahead and get mine out of the way.
All right.
Let me finish mine up. We've already hinted to it in the show, Wayne. And of course, I made my plea back in April when Alain Vigneault was fired from the New York Rangers in regards to them looking for a coach who the players would like and want to play for. And when I texted you yesterday, I think we were in agreement that David Quinn is that type of a coach. And I think the Rangers have done the right thing. I think they've hired a guy who, at least on the surface right now, with no NHL experience, agreed, but with very good college experience, and as a player, has the makings of being a great coach and building a lot of young players into the franchise. So And we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know what's going to happen this summer. So with that, the article that I got was off of NHL.com yesterday. Rangers to hire Quinn as coach. Report. Was at Boston University past 5 seasons. Replaces Vigneault. David Quinn is expected to be named coach of the New York Rangers according to Sportsnet and the New York Post. Quinn, 51, was coach at Boston University for the past 5 seasons. A former assistant for the Colorado Avalanche. He was a first-round draft pick, number 13, for the Minnesota North Stars in the 1984 NHL draft, but never played in the league. Quinn will replace Alain Vigneault, who was fired April 8th after the Rangers failed to qualify for the Stanley Cup playoffs for the first time in 8 seasons. He'll be the second coach to leave the NCAA for the NHL this offseason. The Dallas Stars hired Jim Montgomery from the University of Denver on May the 4th. The next coach is going to have to be able to take the young players we have, the young guys we have, and get them to the next level, Rangers owner James Dolan told the Post on April 20th. I liked what I saw in the young guys, and so did the staff. The guy we hire has to be a developmental coach. I can't stress that enough. Quinn coached at Boston University, his alma mater. He coached Boston University to the NCAA men's ice hockey final in 2015, where it lost 4-3 to Providence. I actually watched that game. And to an NCAA regional final 3 of the past 4 seasons. That's quite an accomplishment.
Yep.
New York was 34, 39, and 9 this season and finished 20 points out of a playoff position in the Eastern Conference. It has the number 9 pick in the 2000 NHL draft with Boston University forward Brady Tkachuk, a top prospect. The Rangers were the only NHL team without a coach.
There's no way Tkachuk, quick note, Tkachuk is going to be available at number 9.
Well,
but okay.
That's what they said.
Yeah.
Herb Brooks also coached the Rangers after leaving the NCAA, University of Minnesota. So the Rangers are the only team to do this twice. Of course, Herb Brooks had a tremendous thing happen. He won the Miracle on Ice. But that being aside, 3 other coaches also moved from the NCAA to the NHL. Dave Hackstall, the current coach at Philadelphia, the University of North Dakota to the Philadelphia Flyers in 2015. Bob Johnson, University of Wisconsin to the Calgary Flames in 1982. And Ned Harkness, Cornell University to the Detroit Red Wings way back in 1970. So my feeling on it as a Rangers fan, I'm happy. I think they did the right thing. I don't think they went after an NHL coach who lost his job and, bring a guy in to get in another brawl with, the management and everything like this. I think what they did was they went outside the box and they got a coach who doesn't have really any NHL experience as a head coach. And I can guarantee you that I think the players are probably happy. It's probably a relief to them. So I'm happy, very happy for this, and it serves as my pick of the week because I watched my team get torn to pieces this year, particularly in the last 25 games. So I look forward to the tenure of David Quinn, and I hope it's a long one, and I hope that I really think the Rangers are gonna serve themselves very well in the upcoming drafts when he's a coach in the college drafts. And I also think that they're going to do a lot more with Hartford. So it should be interesting. And that's my pick of the week.
All right. Good deal. Yeah, and just a note on Quinn, you mentioned that he was drafted very, very high but didn't end up playing in the NHL. And that was due to the fact that he had a lot of injury issues. And back in those days, of course, if you had some major injuries, some of those were career enders. Nowadays, they can fix a lot of the major stuff. So, Yeah, my thoughts. I think it's a good thing for the Rangers
I think they
to
did
get
the
him.
right thing.
I think he's going to be a good coach. He was a great coach in college. I'm happy as a Maine Black Bear fan that BU is now searching for a coach because it might bring them down to earth here a little bit. Although I'm concerned for our local boy Tyler Weiss, who has committed to go play for BU. This is the local kid that I know his father, and he's going to be playing for BU in the fall, and now will be playing for a new coach, and I'm sure he didn't sign up for that. So hopefully things will go well for players like him, because when a college coach leaves, you got to look at those kids that went to BU because they wanted to play for David Quinn, the coach,
Right.
and now he's gone. And the way the rules work in the NCAA is you can't easily switch colleges.
Right.
You have to, if you switch schools, you have to sit out a year. So there's that. And I don't agree with that rule. If coaches leave, I think there should be an exemption for players. And this is across all sports in the NCAA. I've always felt that, the way the NCAA rules work is, in order to transfer from one school to another, you got to sit out an entire calendar year before you can play for your new team. And I don't agree with that under yes, I agree with it if a player just wants to change schools. A lot of times they're changing from one local rival to another. But under a circumstance where the coach gets fired or coach moves on, these players are signing up to go play for not so much the school, but for a particular coach. So you got a number of kids that are at BU that went to BU because David Quinn was the coach and they wanted to learn from him. Now he's not going to be there. I know BU is a big-time program in college hockey. They're going to find a guy that's going to keep the program going. I'm not concerned that BU is not going to be a good team going forward.
Right.
But you just hate for those kids that committed to go play for BU, and the primary reason they wanted to go to BU is for David Quinn, the coach, to learn from him. If the kid wanted to play for BU because he's always been a BU fan and always wanted to play for BU and didn't matter who the coach was, okay, great. But for the kids that wanted to play for David Quinn, they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. They either have to continue playing for BU under this new coach, whoever it's going to be. Probably will end up being one of Quinn's assistants. Usually that's how it goes in college hockey. They're always grooming an assistant in case the coach moves on.
Right.
So more than likely to be one of his assistants. I'd be surprised if they went elsewhere. And then, I don't know. It's just a sticky situation the way the NCAA.
Let me ask you this. Let's take it up to the pro level.
Yeah.
Do you think the Rangers did the right thing? What do you think?
Absolutely. I think he's going to be a good NHL coach.
They maybe interviewed candidates from the NHL, but they went with a guy that's really out of the NHL.
Nope, they got their guy, the guy that they wanted. I think this trend is going to continue, that great college coaches are going to be plucked out of the college ranks to go for the pros. Didn't always happen that way. I know University of Maine's late, great Sean Walsh was approached many times by the NHL. Rumors seem to crop up every year that Sean Walsh was rumored to be going to this NHL team or that NHL team, but he never left. He liked the college game. He wanted to stay in the college game. He was dominating the college game when he was around, and he had no intention of going to play in the NHL, although he did interview a few times for NHL jobs. But he ultimately decided to stay at Maine his whole career until he passed away. But the times have changed. College jobs have become stepping stone jobs now, and that's the new reality. And it's good for the NHL where we're not constantly seeing a recycling of the same coaches. Fired from this team, go to that team. Fired from that team, go to that team. You're not seeing that so much anymore. Teams nowadays are more willing to take a chance on a junior coach that's working his way up. Or a college coach. I think I swallowed a bug. Anyway, so NHL teams are taking chances on these up and coming coaches. So, and I think the Rangers got a good one. Ultimately, is my point.
Good.
All right, so that puts us to the end of the show.
That does. You have a pick of the week, Wayne.
Oh, that's right. I do. I have got to get to mine.
This is a good one.
Kraft Hockeyville. They announced a couple of weeks ago that the Kraft Hockeyville is going to be in Clinton, New York, or the USA version. I haven't seen the Canadian version. I don't know if they've announced that yet or not. But the American Kraft Hockeyville is going to be in Clinton, New York. Who they are the winner of the Kraft Hockeyville 2018, and they are going to host an NHL preseason game. And until now, we didn't know who was going to play in that game. We speculated. Who? Buffalo Sabres, New York Rangers, Boston Bruins, Toronto Maple Leafs, because it's Clinton, New York is in upstate New York, so right off the New York State Thruway. So we kind of speculated on teams that were of the in and around the New York State Thruway area. So that was all the teams I just mentioned. Yep. Well, they finally announced the two teams that are going to be playing in that preseason game and the date. The date is going to be September 25th, 2018, and I'll look up real quick. That is probably a Saturday, right? No, it's Tuesday night. Weird. Okay. Tuesday night, September 25th, 2018. It's going to be the Buffalo Sabres, so we got that one right, and the Columbus Blue Jackets.
And I think that's a good pick.
So Columbus isn't too far away from Clinton, New York.
Nope.
So two fairly local teams. Glad they went with two American teams. I didn't think they would ultimately go with a Canadian team like Toronto or Ottawa in that game, because Kraft Hockeyville does have a Canadian version of this game, which generally puts two Canadian teams against each other. So it's generally a celebration of hockey, in American and Canadian, two separate ones. CBC in Canada makes a big deal of the Canadian one, and of course NBC will make a big deal of the American one, and some nice exposure for the Clinton, New York. And they also announced, as part of this announcement, that tickets for this game are going to be free. And, of course, they're going to give the tickets to the organizations that are going to be benefactors of this game, the arena that's going to get the upgrades, and the local hockey community in that area. And it'll be up to those communities to figure out who gets to go to the game or who gets what tickets to go to this game. So if you're interested in getting tickets to the game and you're in the Clinton, New York area, certainly go on to NHL.com and look up this article. There's not much details. They're basically saying tickets will be free, but details on how to get them will be announced at a later time. So they're not announcing it yet, but obviously if you're part of the hockey community there in Clinton, New York, you probably already know how they're going to do it. But yeah, it's a great event for the towns that host, for sure. So should be a lot of fun.
Yes, should be.
All right, and they usually televise the game too, and it's weird to watch a game in these tiny little arenas that basically I grew up playing in. Although I never played.
I don't know if Clinton, New York is anywhere near the Erie Canal, but there's a vast network of people and whatever going around up there.
Yeah.
Cities like Utica, Syracuse,
Well, it is right along
a
Interstate.
waterway.
It is right along Interstate 87, so there's that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. So that is it. That's all I have for this week.
That's it. I don't have anything else, Wayne. And, next week we're basically going to be reporting on 2 games.
Yep.
The game tonight and the first Stanley Cup game on Monday.
Yep.
Unless we have a podcast Thursday night, in which case we'll be reporting on game 2. So,
yep.
Not a lot in terms of games now, but we're getting down to the finality of it.
Yep.
But
yeah, the next couple of podcasts will be fairly short. It won't be the 2-hour marathons that we've been doing all season long. So,
yeah.
And this one's going to come up short of an hour and a half. So this one's pretty short, and probably the next couple of weeks are going to be even shorter because we'll literally be talking about a couple of games, like you said.
That's right.
So, all right, let's go ahead and end it then. And yeah, next week we'll have coverage of those 2 games. Of course, the international's done, so that'll be off the table. We'll have coverage of the American Hockey League and any of the news stories that come up over the next week, which I'm sure there will be some. So with that, we'll go ahead and end the show. And until next week, Steve, we'll see you then.
Wayne, you take care of yourself, and we'll be in touch with you. Have a good week.
Yeah, you too. All right. Good night.
Good night. And that was a good one.
Yep.
So I wanted to pick your brain on Pat Quinn, and it sounds like you
I'm just happy he's leaving for the main side of things.
But he did a good job at Boston University. 3 of the last 4 years they went to the finals, or to the regional finals. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's hard to do.
Yeah, in the way things go in college hockey, that is very hard.
There's only roughly a third of the teams get into the tournament at all. So you got to be in the top third in the country just to make the tournament, never mind win a game. And then it's single elimination, so it's a crapshoot after that.
Yep.
So, all right, well, I'll let you get to your yard work. I'll go out and finish my yard work. And
Yep. That's basically what I'm going to be doing. I got to mow the lawn, and I got to get it done tonight, man. It's been a couple weeks, and it's terribly long.
Yeah,
so.
well, mine's pretty.
With all the rain.
My yard's pretty wet because, all that rain
and also my job, there's only certain days I can do it. So, anyways, good to talk to you. I'll be in touch. We'll get together next week, maybe this time on Wednesday. I don't know what my schedule's going to be. It may turn out that we have to do it Thursday. So, but I will be in touch with you.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
Have a good week.
All right, you too.
We'll be in touch now.
All right. Yep.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.